I was in, I think, an electronics shop, purchasing a transistor radio. As is the way these days, both in the brochure and the assistant congratulated me for doing this. This, of course, was ridiculous. It wasn't my birthday, I wasn't getting married, there was nothing to be congratulated about. In the case of you purchasing this video, it's an entirely different matter. You are to be congratulated because you have decided to make that step to learn an instrument. And it might possibly, as it did in my case, entirely change your life. Learning to play an instrument is hard work. If anybody tells you any different, they're wrong. However, it's also one of the most exciting and rewarding and fun things that you could ever do. Whether you want to play an instrument for your own amusement, just to play it to friends perhaps, or impress people at parties, or maybe become one of the great exponents of all time. Any of these things are now within your grasp, but you have to have a good grasp of basics. That's the basics. And that's what this video sets out to teach you. It assumes you have no knowledge of the instrument whatsoever and are starting entirely from scratch. If you follow this video through step by step, by the time you come to the end, you will have a good working knowledge of the instrument, enabling you to decide what type or style of music you wish to play. Of course, there is no substitute for practice, that's the big key to it, and even just as soon as you get to grips with whatever instrument it is, just one note I always found when I started to play, just by getting some sort of a rhythm on one note, gets you the feel of the instrument. And then just adding something else as a simple harmony. It's such a pleasure. Start by playing the video all the way through. It will give you a good idea of the journey, that's the musical journey that you are embarking upon, and the structure of the course. You will notice the program is in sections which you can easily find. Try to complete a section and don't move on until you feel comfortable and ready. When the tutor demonstrates a piece or section, try playing along until you're happy with the way that you sound. Keep practicing. That's the essence of learning any instrument. The beauty of this way of learning is that you are in control and you can choose the time and speed at which you learn. So we have chosen one of the best around to teach you. Ric Sanders is a talented writer and musician, working with Fairport Convention, All About Eve, Gordon Giltrap, Jerry Rafferty, Jerry Donahue, Loudon Wainwright III, and Soft Machine.
Well, hello. I'm here to introduce you to this, the violin, or as I will henceforth call it, the fiddle. And also introduce you to this stick, which I shall be referring to by its name, which happens to be the bow. Now, I'll admit to you from the start that there are easier instruments to play than the violin if you want an easy life. For instance, the kazoo offers far less of a challenge. But if you don't mind putting in a bit of a hard work and a bit of practice, which of course all instruments need, the fiddle is a tremendously versatile instrument that can be used for all sorts of different styles. For folk, as in... and sort of jazz and rock and blues, for instance... I nearly freaked out then. You see the effect it has on me. You can also play classical music on it, which is the music probably most associated with the violin, as in... You notice I went all serene while I was playing that. This particular violin that I'm playing was made in 1793. I can't actually afford a new one. And you'll notice that it has a small appliance on it, which is a pickup, which means you can play it amplified, which enables you to play with those hooligans, guitarists, electric guitarists, synthesizer players, drummers, bass players, people like that who like to play very loud, so the fiddle can strike back. You can even get sort of fully solid electric fiddles. But this one is a straightforward acoustic fiddle fitted with a pickup, which I'll be demonstrating a bit later. Firstly, though, if you decide that you're going to be a fiddler, the first thing you have to do is acquire one. So, where do you get your fiddle from? Now, the obvious way to acquire it, of course, is to go and buy it from a shop. If you choose this course of action, I'd strongly recommend that you go to a shop that's got a large sign outside it, or a medium-sized sign, or even a quite small one, providing it's nicely presented, that says violins and cellos. That is a shop that specialises in those instruments, because it's a very specialised area. Whatever instrument you buy, whatever price range you decide to buy it in, it's very important that the instrument is set up well. Makes it possible to play. I've seen many school instruments that have been so badly set up that I don't know how the kids could have played them at all. They'd be handy for grating cheese, but let me show you. This is a reasonably cheap fiddle. It hasn't been set up yet. As you can hear. What you need to do to a fiddle to make it playable is you have to have the bridge fitted to the right, so that the strings are the right height above the fingerboard. The curvature of the bridge has to be correct. And you can use many different sorts of strings on a fiddle. There are strings made of gut, there are strings made of metal, there are strings made of nylon. The ones that I'd suggest you head for are the metal strings, because they last longer and they hold their tuning very well. They have a higher tension than the gut strings, so you do need to have these small string adjusters fitted to the tailpiece. This is the tailpiece here. With the pegs, as I've said, it's important that they're fitted well, but you can also get a remarkable little tube of stuff called peg paste. This is incredible. This, if your pegs are sticking, it makes them move more easily, but if they're slipping, it makes them hold better, it makes them stick better. I don't know how they do it. The only thing to bear in mind, of course, with this is don't get it mixed up with that stuff you put on chapped lips, because it tastes horrible. I've done that myself, you know. Now, the other way to get a violin, apart from just going and buying one, is if you're lucky enough to be given one, or maybe find one in your loft or attic. There's hundreds of fiddles lying around the country, been probably covered in dust for years and years. I in fact got my first fiddle from my granny, who'd had it lying around for years, and Nobody in the family played it. So that was a stroke of luck. But again, it was in a pretty unplayable condition. So if you do acquire a fiddle like this, the thing to do is to go to the violin dealer, the specialist, and ask him to set it up for you, to do the bridge, the strings, all the things that we've gone over. So you've got an instrument that's playable. Of course, the other thing that you'll need is the bow. So we'll move on to the bow now. Here we have the bow. Very much important, as important for the sound as the fiddle is. The bow consists of many, many strands of horsehair. This is horse's hair here, I don't know if you can see that. Probably about 200 strands, I haven't counted them recently. And the way that the sound comes out of the fiddle is you take stuff called resin, or sometimes rosin, it has two names for some reason which escapes me. That's a block of resin, which is sort of adhesive, it's sticky, and you rub the bow with the resin, which gives the hair adhesion, and so when you draw it across the strings, you get the violin sound. A thing to remember that it is very important when looking after your bow is that it is tensioned. You have a screw at the end here which tensions the stick. And because the quality of the bow depends on it having a good spring to it, at the end of playing you should always untension the bow like this. So when it's left in the case, the hair is just flapping about, putting no tension on the stick. And then when you're ready to play it, you just wind it up. And now you're ready to start thinking about playing the thing. So, we're almost, but not quite, ready to start thinking about actually playing notes. Firstly, we have to get over the problem of holding the fiddle. Now, there are two accessories to aid you in this. One being this, the chin rest, which stays attached to the fiddle all the time. The other, on the reverse side, is this thing, which is called a shoulder rest. This is detachable. You have to take it off, actually, because otherwise the fiddle wouldn't fit in the case. Also, both the chin rest and the shoulder rest come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, different brands, different designs, and it's very simply down to finding the combination that feels most comfortable for you. For this, you have to go back to the shop again. You're by now on first-name terms with the chap behind the counter, and so he'll be quite happy to let you try out endless combinations, and you can find which is the most comfortable. I have to say at this point that not everybody uses a shoulder rest. In the history of the fiddle, this is a comparatively modern innovation, comparatively. If you're, for instance, blessed with a particularly short neck and a fondness for wearing padded jackets, you won't need it. But most people use it. The idea of it, very simply, is that it enables you to hold the fiddle in a nice relaxed way without having to use your left arm to support any of the weight. So you see, no hands. And you can just sort of sit here all day. I often do this, as it happens. Have a cup of tea, watch TV, just sit there. See, quite relaxed. So this hand is completely free to not have to worry about supporting the weight of the fiddle. As far as the position of the left hand goes, there we are. That's the position. With the wrist straight. That's the sort of standard, if you want, classical position. Again, I have to say that many great players, especially on the folk and country and western scene, play with the flat wrist. I've seen some fantastic players playing with the hand in that position. So it would be wrong to say that this is the only way to play. It depends on the style of music you're playing, how comfortable you feel with it, or whatever. But that's the position that I'd recommend. So there we are, nice and relaxed. And then you're ready to start thinking about the bow. You'll be needing the bow. So how do we hold the bow? This part of the bow here, for reasons which are beyond me, this is called the frog. And you hold the bow by just tucking the thumb gently into that little indent in the frog. The other fingers fit in a hopefully relaxed way over the top of the stick. The little finger is especially useful because it kind of helps you balance the bow. You can actually sense the weight of the bow using the little finger. You don't necessarily have to keep the little finger on the stick all the time. Sometimes it will find its way loose. But that's the basic way of holding the bow. Again, I've seen many great players, many great folk players, who hold the stick like this. In fact, it's when I started years ago playing folk music. I was self-taught, and for quite a long time I held the stick like that. And there are some fabulous players who hold it like that. But again, I'd recommend the standard way of holding it, which is like that. So we have the bow, we have the fiddle, and we're ready to start playing. Before we do that, just a brief note about keeping the instrument in good order. Because you saw me earlier put resin on the bow hair, the resin, as you bow the fiddle, the dust, resin dust, comes off and accumulates underneath the strings. So it's a good idea if after each time that you've played, if you just get a duster and just wipe it over like that. If you don't do that, the resin will accumulate under there over the weeks and months and years, and it sort of turns into a horrible sticky gunge. In fact, it's quite often when you see old fiddles like those ones I was telling you about that you might find in your loft, you'll quite often find that they've got a sort of black gungy mark around there, which isn't too attractive. But there are various miracle preparations that you can purchase from the shop, which you're now spending most of your life in, to clean that off. But providing you just dust it regularly, there shouldn't be any problem. So now we're about to play a note on the fiddle. Now, you wouldn't believe how incredibly close we are now getting to actually playing some notes on the fiddle, but there is one annoying little thing that we've got to get out of the way first, which is tuning it, getting the fiddle in tune. Now, the fiddle, as you can see, has 4 strings. The strings are tuned a fifth apart. It's a very symmetrical instrument, which is a nice thing about it. By saying that they're tuned a fifth apart, I mean that if you play the bottom string and count 5 notes up, it gets you to the next string. So the bottom string is a G. Count 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th note is the next string up, which is a D. Same thing again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you arrive at A. 1 more to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've hit the top string, which is an E. Now, it's useful to know where these notes lie on a piano keyboard. Maybe you've got a piano at home. First of all, you have to find middle C on the keyboard. Now, if you're not at all familiar with the keyboard, get somebody to show you. So middle C, it's this note here. Now, if we count, including that note, 4 notes down, 1, 2, 3, 4, we get the bottom note of the fiddle, the G. Count 5 notes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we get the D. Same thing again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets us to A. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets us to E. So the open strings on the fiddle, just one more time, are G, D, A, and E. There you have them. Now, obviously the piano isn't the easiest thing to carry around with you to tune the fiddle up. It's very awkward, for instance, to get on buses. I've tried this. And there are more convenient devices for tuning. For instance, this. This is one of the many electronic tuners that's on the market. They're very good. They're designed really for electric guitars and synthesizers and basses and stuff. But certain models work equally well with all instruments, and they're very good. They automatically tell you which note you're playing, and when the needle is in the center and when the lights flash, you know that you're in tune. But they are quite expensive, and so probably for starters you want something cheaper and easier to tune up with. This is about the most basic thing you can tune up with. It's a tuning fork, and it usually